I think that a lot of couples that break up or that like get divorced, I think that they start, they start doing things and listening to other people and not involving their spouse.
Welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And I am host, Ryan Hewitt.
I am
a host.
So today's episode, we're going to dive into something we've kind of talked a little bit about, but I don't think we've actually really told a full story. But it was Easter this weekend, right? So why don't you tell them a little bit about your race?
You mean Christmas part 2?
Yes.
I'm as a kid, I never got like presents for Easter. It's just like you got candy and stuff like that. But now, like Lily had 2 Easters, and she got like 2 huge baskets of presents and stuff like that. And then she's not alone.
Not from us.
All the other, we gave her on Sunday. You gave her the binoculars with the bird
Yeah,
watching.
but then the other baskets weren't for me.
No, of course. I mean, Lily's got a lot of fans, but yeah. Anyways, so I just think it's funny because it's like,
so we're coming down our
Christmas
Easter high. But I think the Easter highlight was, why don't you tell a little bit about like doing the Go Ruck and like your experience with that?
Yeah.
Kick us
So,
off.
well, it was called the Tough Ruck.
Whatever. Mud Ruck, Lily calls
Mud Ruck. Lily called it the Mud Ruck because you know why? It's because your mom called it the Mud Ruck.
Oh, really?
For some reason. Yeah. So it's a foundation that hosts a marathon done with a rucksack every year. It takes place the day before the Boston Marathon, and it is so you get a Boston Marathon finisher medal, and if you raise enough money, you get swag, a jacket, and the whole deal, which is pretty cool. But the organization raises money for families of fallen military and civil servants. So, families in need, get all of the proceeds from all the fundraising. And I think they raised $1 million this year, which was really awesome. So, I found this 3 years ago because I like doing like physical challenges, and one of my friends and I had discovered this, and it just aligned a lot with Kendra's story, losing her dad, not immediately from the repercussions of being on a call, but basically because of that accident, lost her dad. And, I take care of a lot of military civil servants in my practice, and I've always, tried to get back to those communities. So yeah, it's a 26.2 mile ruck, which is you carry weight on your shoulders. The heavy division is 35 pounds. So yeah, it's a long day. It was a beautiful day. It's cool. This year was the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War. So it was a little bit extra special, and it was a beautiful day. So sun was out, light breeze, not too hot.
Yeah,
it was good. And then we went out.
It just so happened that it fell on Easter, so that's why I kind of wanted to bring that up, because it was kind of a segue of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so instead of going to church, I went on a 6-hour ruck.
Yeah, and it was fun because we got to come cheer you on, and like at the end, like we came to the finish line, and for the first time ever, like Ryan said, he this is not the first time ever he's done this, but he carried the sack in honor of my dad, and then one of our patients who had lost her husband he was killed in action in Afghanistan, which was, I think, that kind of like made it even a little bit more special too. And this was also the first year that, because it fell on Easter, we were going to have like a traditional Easter, and my brother came and he got to see that, and it was fun because I was driving there, and him and his girlfriend Brooke came with us. And I was telling them about how, like, because you ran Boston in 2019, but the finish line of this is so much more meaningful, like even as a spectator, like it's very like much more emotional to watch, I feel like, because like there's people of all different ages, and like,
well, you can actually be up to the finish line. You right up near the finish line. Yeah, the Boston Marathon finish line is like
ants.
You cannot. You can't be there to like receive your loved one when they finish the race, because it's just such a big ordeal. Yeah, you're on Boylston, and like it's all shut down.
Yeah.
Anyways, especially now after the bombing and everything.
Yeah. So it was super cool because Ryan got to carry like Lily across the finish line, and just like a cool way. But one of the reasons that I'm segueing with this is I just couldn't fit one more thing in on Sunday with Lily on my own, so I opted not to go to physical church on Sunday. I opted to watch, a sermon online, and I was actually looking for our specific church's sermon, but I couldn't find it, and, I was like, "Whatever
Mhm.
pops up, that's what I'm gonna watch." So while I was making Lily breakfast, I popped up this church that was ironically in Charleston, South Carolina, called Seacoast Church. And I told Ryan, I was like, "Man, I really liked the message." And it was really like cool. And like Lily, they played like a little video about like the real meaning of Easter, like how Christ is risen and stuff like that. She was like watching it, and then she was like dancing around to the songs they were playing. And it just reminded me that, like, I don't think we've told our story of our journey back to church. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. But most of all, the message from the sermon on Sunday I was sharing with Ryan earlier was just really stuck with me, that I was like, oh man, this is a good one to talk about when it comes to like your marriage. And the message was about how there's a couple ways you can look in life, right? Like you can look backward and you can get stuck in the past. You can look sideways, meaning, and how I interpret that is like kind of starting to compare yourself. So when it comes to marriage, thinking about like comparing yourself to other couples that seem to have it all together, which no one ever has it all together. It's always a work in progress, in my opinion. And then you could look always, he talked about, you could also look forward. And looking forward is sometimes getting ahead of yourself, which I'm very guilty of this myself. I'm very big picture thinker. I like to look forward. And sometimes when you're looking forward, you get lost in the present. Like you're not present with the actual moment that you're in, which again, very guilty of, something that I'm constantly paying attention to. And the message came around to the power of looking up as another option, and about looking up to God. And it made me really start to think of, one, I was kind of wrestling with like the fact that I wasn't going to go to church on Easter, to like physical church. And I was like, man, I was like, this is a really good lesson for me to just remind myself that like church doesn't have to be a formal thing. Like it's not like, there's so many people I feel like that go to church and like they feel like that is their thing for the week. And then they go about their daily life and their relationship, and it's not God centered. And the difference between, he was saying, is talking about is like a lot of us need to stop looking backward. We need to stop looking forward. We need to stop looking sideways, and we need to start to look up. And I also would add this other component of just like also look in, like looking in at like, what are the things that I need to work on? What are the things that we need to work on in our marriage? So it kind of stimulated this conversation that I wanted to have today. And that was is just like thinking about how it wasn't till a couple years ago that we went and had a commitment to build our intimacy with God. And I wanted to talk a little bit about today, like how that has worked in our marriage and how it has influenced our marriage um, for the better. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. And it brought me to thinking about one of the things that they closed this message with too was they were talking about how next week is their baptism Sunday. And then I started to realize
Yeah,
that
they gotta
also,
capitalize on all the new bodies in there, but
yes, it's, and because then I was like, oh, is this a trend? Because for our church in Danvers, they also are having
well, not
baptism
it's not a
Sunday.
trend, it's a marketing
So, and I
opportunity.
was like, "Oh, that's what I'm saying. This is a great marketing
Yeah.
opportunity." But it brought me back to the minute that he said the baptism, it made me think about like our journey back to church. So that's what I
So
wanted
why don't you tell the
to
story
talk
then?
about. So, um I was raised Catholic, and we were like casual, I call casual Catholics. Like we went to CCD, I did first communion, all of that kind of stuff. I remember specifically coming home from CCD. I probably am going to guess was I was probably about 10 years old. And I remember legit saying to my mom, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not going back there.
Did you say bullshit?
Oh, yeah, I guarantee it. And you know what's crazy? She never made me go again.
Mhm.
And I did do first communion, like, I was going through the CCD to get to this first communion, but then after that, I was just, like, starting to feel a drift away from the Catholic Church, not knowing, like I said, at that age, I didn't really know I didn't have some of the church stigmas that come with it,
Yeah, because you
Catholic
weren't a
Church.
devout Catholic, that's why.
Yes. And it wasn't very,
You were
like
indoctrinated.
yes, and I wasn't very, like it was casual. It's casual Catholic is
Mhm.
what I like to call it. But a big shift for me happened when I was 12, which I've talked a lot about before on the podcast, when my dad passed away. And I did not realize it till 20 plus years later. But I remember so clearly the day that we did my dad's funeral, and we did a traditional Catholic funeral for my dad. And it was at a church here in Danvers called St. Richard's. And what was amazing is that I started to realize when we first started going back to church in 2022 that I would sit in the back of the church we go to now, Netcast. And when I would sit there and I would just freaking cry. And I had no idea what I was freaking crying about. And I went the first couple weeks by myself. Because I didn't know, like, if Ryan was gonna be interested in it. I didn't know how to bring up this conversation, but Ryan started to observe that I was going pretty consistently.
2 weeks
And
consistently.
consistently, that's for me. That's consistent for me.
Yeah,
And
that wasn't a jab.
this one day, I started to realize the last time I was in church was when I did my dad's eulogy. And the pieces started to fall in place. And so I was 12, like I said, I did my dad's eulogy. I remember part of the eulogy, I read um a this poem, I think it's a poem called The Dash.
Mhm.
And the dash is about how, like, you have the date you're born and then the date you die, and then there's the dash that indicates the
How you live.
how you lived in between. And I remember, like I said, very, very vividly, like, what I was wearing, all of that kind of stuff, and I remember walking down the stairs of my dad's funeral, like, following his casket, and just saying, like, "Why would fucking God do this to me?"
Mhm.
Like, at 12 years old, but at 12 years old, you don't know really how to articulate that to people. And I started to realize, fast forward to 2022, like I said, 20 plus years later, that I was really angry with God, and I did not have a consistent commitment. I think I had dabbled at a couple churches that were really, like, very popular churches where I had lived in California, and then on in Florida, and they had these very big pastors that had huge followings. So I had kinda dabbled with, like, kinda going back to a non-denominational church, but I had just really steered clear of, like, the Catholic, um, way of church, just, like, I had no idea how unconscious this decision was for me. Fast forward to 2022, I can't believe it, but I get invited by, friends of ours, who randomly reached out to me and invited us to Netcast. And Netcast is in this mall. And this is a mall in a town where it's just like we call it the ghetto mall because it's like there's no reason to really go to this mall other than the movie theater and now this church. Um, so I remember fast forward to the baptism is I was thinking about how I did not know this was happening this day, but Ryan had gone maybe 1 or 2 times with me to the church.
I don't remember.
I think you had gone 1
Wasn't
or 2
many. It wasn't
times,
many.
and it was not many, and he had started to like, he was open to it, like, you were open the first time, which kinda shocked me that you were into it, and then, but I think it was about the 3rd time we go to church, and then all of a sudden, they announce that it's baptism Sunday. And you and I kinda looked at each other because we didn't really know what that meant.
Well, I know what a baptism was,
Well,
but
we knew what
we
a
did we
baptism
didn't
was,
know
but
it
we
was
didn't know,
baptism
like, it
Sunday.
was like, you're gonna walk up if you want to and get baptized regardless of how old you are. Like, I thought of baptism
No, right.
in, like,
Like
the
you're when you're 2 years old or whatever.
Catholic church,
Yeah.
right? Like, when you don't have a choice, you're just, like,
You're 2. Yeah.
you're baptized,
You're a
right?
baby.
It's part of the process of being a Catholic. So, I remember we were all standing and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna bring a big tub up and, like, it doesn't matter if you don't have clothes, you can go in the back. We have clothes for you, blah, blah." And I was like, but all of a sudden, I felt like this super pull that I needed to do it, but I was, like, stuck, like, I couldn't move my legs. And you looked at me and I remember I was crying and you said, "Do you wanna do this?" And I was like, this was, like, the first time I feel like I kind of got over my, people pleasing maybe, or, like, I don't know even what the word is I wanna explain right now. So, I'll skip over that. Um, and you're like, "Go do it then." And so I remember just, like, again, what I was wearing, walking up, they gave me, like, a shirt to put on and shorts, and, like, I go in the back, I change, and I come out, and, like, you basically get in this, like, really nice tub, but it's in front of the whole church, and it's on, like, they're videoing it, and Pastor Matt was the one doing it, and he just, like, prayed over me, but the most amazing part was that I had left Ryan sitting in the seats, right? And I wasn't gonna ask him back. Like, I was like, "Dude, this is his 3rd time at church." Like, he probably thinks I'm a little weird that I wanna do this anyways. And, so I go in the tub, do the baptism, and then I'm like, "Where is Ryan?" And you had gone in the back and changed and come out. And I just remember that that day, I was like, "I don't know how or why this is happening for us, but it's happening for us, not like to us." And it was super emotional because I felt like the way I can like kind of explain it is like a little bit cleansing of our marriage. Um, and so that was our journey kind of back to like starting to build intimacy and relationship with God, not only together, but one on one, which has been really transformational and brought me back to just even thinking about the message from the sermon this weekend of like looking up to God even in our marriage, like when we are struggling or when we're not feeling connected or when we are starting to drift. And just like asking him to help me, which like if you asked me if I would do that before, I would just be like, how's he gonna help me? Like that would have been my like I just couldn't get past that there was a lot of growth that needed to happen for me and still is. So I wanted to get on today in this episode to be about this, about how getting back to God has really shifted our relationship. So I'm curious to see how you think it has shifted. And I talk about this not so that maybe you try this with your spouse this weekend. Like, hey, want to go check out a church. I think you also need to really do your due diligence of where you go, and you also need to feel called to where you go. Um, and we've met a lot of awesome, really nice couples in the community. And it's just been really nice. We've done a couple of their marriage courses, which have been super helpful. And also we found other couples that are Christian couples that we can also look up to. We had a few going into our new relationship with Christ, but I think that there's been a couple that have now, I do look at up as inspiration and as role models. So my question for you is that like how do you think going our journey back to God has like helped and grown our marriage?
Um, well, I'll just tell you like my experience of that day. I think that like you deciding to go and get baptized, I was surprised, but I wasn't, I wasn't floored. I wasn't shocked. I didn't think you were weird. I remember like I think I was baptized once upon a time. If I don't remember. It was one of those things, like, I was probably a baby.
Mhm.
One of those things that you do for your kid because you wanna be good parents type of deal, but I never went to church growing up. I remember going to a Bible camp and well, it was like a Calvary Temple youth camp, and I just remember having a good experience, and, like, that was the first time this introduction of, like, giving your heart to Jesus, and, it was very emotional, and it was one of the things I experienced, and I didn't really know what it meant because there's no carryover, there's nothing else that
So no
happened after
follow-up, yeah.
camp.
Mhm.
And then, like, I never went to church. It never even dawned on me that I should like, this is something that I could or should or would go to. I didn't have anybody in my life that was, like, a really strong Christian male role model that I would have, like, emulated or wanted to learn from. So, like, this never really came up until, I guess, I moved to Massachusetts. Um, and, like, I think that when I was part of I've been part of Wake Up Warrior for a long time, since 2018, and they have progressed. Like, Garrett had progressively become more Christian. Like, he was always
Mhm.
open to, so here's the thing, I never really understood, like, so he was big on just getting quiet and, like, listening to your voice is what he had called it. And that was a new concept to me. It's like listening to your intuition or listening to your inner true self, and he's like, get to your core of, like, who you really are and just quiet the noise, right? Doing it first thing in the morning is probably the best time to do it because you're least likely to be interrupted. Your brain waves are just sort of, clicking online, and it's where you can become the most clear, and it's where, like, you can start to channel, like, hey, this is what I want in life. These are my goals I want to set. This is who I want to be. This is, what I think. This is what I'm grateful for. And he would call that the voice. And eventually it progressed into, like, wow, I didn't realize, like, I was trying to lead this voice myself. It's actually God and Jesus Christ, being I guess, the representation of what, a perfect human being was and how you live your life. And that was why he came. And um, it just kind of opened me up to a whole different version of what that meant. Because to me, it was just like, this is fucking science fiction, like weird. This is old stories of, like, science fiction, to help people feel better about their life. But he put it in a way that made me start to think about it differently. So I became open to it. And then Kendra started to go to church, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go too. And then I was like, oh, okay, this isn't weird here. There's a band and they're young people and there's all kinds of people that go here, and it's in a mall. So it's not like in a stuffy, like, cathedral.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was one of the first or second times I went that they were doing the baptisms. And when you went, I just got really emotional and I just felt the pull to do it. And I was like, well, I don't want to follow Kendra just because she's doing it. Like, I'm done with her, like, leading our life. I don't want her to have to lead our business, lead our family, lead our marriage, like, because that was my sort of default before. But I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not gonna do this for you. I was like, I'm gonna do this for me and for us. Because I wanted to do it together. And they brought me in the back and they're like, "Are you, gonna give your life to Jesus?" and stuff. Like, "What's your email?" I'm like, "Oh my god, okay." Like, just give me the T-shirt and I'll go out there. And then because I was the last one, right? They kind of
Yeah.
postponed
Uh-huh.
it for me. And then I remember Matt asked me, he's like, you know, I can't remember what the question was specifically. He asked me if it was like, "Why are you doing this?" or "What's in your heart?" or "What do you want to say?" It was like, and I don't even know why I said this, but I was like, I just want to get off the fence. I'm like, I just want to, like, go all in, right?
Mm.
Because I think in my life, like, I'm a very, like, analytical person. I'm a doctor. Like, I need the data. I like specificity. I like facts. And, like, I'm never going to get all the facts of, like, religion and spirituality. It's like, why not? Why not just go all in and believe in this if your heart tells you that this is something that's going to be the way of how you want to live your life and in your marriage. So I just said, I'm just done being on the fence. And we got baptized. And after that, it's not like all of a sudden we turned into these Bible thumping, like,
Mhm.
different people. Like, that's not at all the case. In fact, some people, if they even listen to this podcast who know me or who know of me, are like, oh my God, what is Ryan going to be like quoting scripture now? Like, no, definitely not. Um,
I'm definitely not doing that because I'll definitely fuck it up.
that's the spirit. No, to like what this opened up for me was like, okay, so now I have something, I guess, more concrete to focus on, that's my spirituality and my being and who I am. Because before it's like, what do I read? Like personal growth books, and like practice incantations, and like, you know, write down the things I'm grateful for. Like this is much different. And the way I looked at it is like, you had said it before, it's like you're trying to lead your life white knuckling it, doing it yourself. And it's like, Jesus take the wheel is the saying. But I don't know, I just felt like it felt good to just start to pay attention to the signs of what we're supposed to be and do and have,
Mhm,
together. Like I knew we were supposed to be together. I knew that we were supposed to have Lily. I know that like I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing. Like that all felt good, but sometimes you get lost in the doing, and like I think I
mhm,
know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't.
mm,
And when you get quiet and you just listen, you look for the signs, you start to recognize um what God is telling you that you're supposed to be doing. And it's, again, you could call it your intuition, your voice, or God, or whatever. And I think that having like a manual like the Bible, like sometimes it can cue, like the allegories or the stories in there can cue messages to you that you need to hear. And I
mhm.
believe in that. And then things happen in your life, and sometimes you gotta like stop and pay attention, which is why you're saying like
Look up.
look up, right? But the other thing, so that's the way I think that it's really helped and saved our marriage. But I think one of the most powerful messages that I could share on this podcast is that the one of the most important things you can do as a married couple is like make sure you look up, but look in. Like no, look up but go inwards.
Mhm,
And don't look outwards when something isn't right in your marriage, because like I think therapy's great. I think like having friends is awesome. Having family is wonderful. Having people you look up to and follow, like that's all great.
mhm,
But when it comes to your marriage, like if you're not getting face to face with your spouse and talking about the things that you need to talk about in that are going on in your lives together, like there's never going to be a connection. Like then you're just going to drift and start to, copy other people, follow the wrong things, like listen to advices that maybe aren't the right messages for you. I mean, I think that a lot of couples that break up or that like get divorced, I think that they start, they start doing things and listening to other people and not involving their spouse. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like,
Or looking in the mirror of themselves, like, "Where do I need to grow? Where do I need to get better?"
well, yeah, I mean, but you look, your spouse is inevitably a mirror for you.
Mhm,
So you're using each other as a mirror, but yes, you're doing your own individual work, but together, right?
mhm,
But making sure that you're recognizing like you're the problem, you're also the solution, right? And
mhm,
both parties have to recognize that, because if it's always just one person who's always doing the work and the other one isn't, it's not going to work.
mhm,
But anyway, so like making sure, and what does that look like? Like going inwards? Well, it looks like doing therapy together, not just individually. It looks
mhm,
like having hard conversations and confrontations, and telling each other like your deepest desires and your fantasies, and your like, hey, this is the way that I've always envisioned parenting, and hey, this is like what I want for our lives, right?
mhm.
And like, hey, like when I got quiet with God this morning, like this is what came up,
Yeah,
like stuff
and
like
I
that.
think one of the things that's really important that we hit on too is that, like, sometimes, like, when you say fantasy, um, being okay with, like, that doesn't mean, like, a sexual fantasy all the time. Like, sometimes,
But
like,
it
one of
could
the
be
th
a sexual
it could
fantasy.
be, okay? But one of the things that comes up when I even think about that is, like, we've been having this conversation, which is probably gonna be coming up on an episode soon because I'm feeling it. But is like, you know, what do we want our lives to look like together in a couple years from now? Like, and starting to make some shifts to that. And like some of it right now, based on where we're at, feels like a fantasy. Like it doesn't seem possible to me. But that's when you look up. and you're like, "Hey, I'm starting to feel this calling. Like, this is starting to, make me feel like I have a new, um, purpose and a new driver that I'm looking to pursue." And but I start to realize now that, like, sometimes that's not my plan. It's not so much my plan all the time. I can tell very quickly when it's my ego, my plan, and I'm trying to force something.
How do you tell that?
I can feel the disconnect. I can feel the disconnect when I'm like, "This is me trying to force this," versus this is God's timing. And it's like when something bad happens in your marriage or your business or in your family, and it's like, how do you start asking this question that I think is so powerful, which is, "How is this happening for me, not to me?" And I think our journey back to God for me has really given me a little bit more peace where, like, when something happens, good, bad, or indifferent, is I'm starting to ask like, "Hey, why is this showing up right now? Like, where's the meaning behind this for me?" Instead of me forcing something to happen that isn't necessarily at its time to happen.
Mhm.
And so I think that like, um, it's a really, really good reminder, like I said, back to the looking up, is that like sometimes when you're facing challenges, not only as an individual, but as a married couple, is that like starting to exercise the muscle of like, hey, God, why is it showing up for us right now? Why is this back again? What do we still need to have get out of this? And just like you're saying, get quiet. But instead, sometimes now the quiet is like I hear God's voice, not my voice,
Mhm.
because ultimately he's got a better plan than me. And ultimately he's got his own timing. That isn't necessarily my timing. And I think that if you can really start to embrace that, not only as an individual, but in your marriage, you can start to like serve the kingdom on a different level when you are connected, where you also have intimacy with God, not just with each other.
It's good. You wrap it up with that.
All right. So, if you enjoy this episode and this conversation, please share it with someone that you think might also enjoy it. And as always, please rate, review, and subscribe. And we look forward to talking with you next week on the next episode
Wow.
of The Weaponized Marriage.
You're gonna do that every time. Crush that.
Okay.
Crush the outro.
All right.
All right. See you guys.